SUVs, they're all the rage these days, aren't they? But what about electric SUVs? There aren't that many unless you're talking about high up in the luxury end of the market. But Peugeot are trying to fix that with this, a battery-powered version of their 2008 SUV, cleverly titled the e-2008. See what they did there? Yeah, good. I'll give you the headline figures first of all. It's £29,000 after the government grant. It's got a 50 kilowatt hour battery, good for 204 miles, and it's a good looking car. I especially like these headlights. You've got these triple claw mark LEDs on either side, and then this huge pair of fangs that run down vertically on the left and right. It looks like it's been in a fight or it's ready to be in a fight. Can't quite work it out. Then the grille. On the petrol and diesel versions, you've got vertical slats, but here you've got horizontal slats, which are now body colored. And this badge has a two-tone finish. They call it a dichroic finish, which means that this blue section changes from blue to green depending on the angle you look at it from. Around the sides, what makes it really stand out is how angular it is, with a mixture of curved and flat surfaces designed to make the E2008 resemble the surface of a rock. Obviously, it gets an E badge, and GT versions of this car get nice big 18-inch wheels. Boot space is actually quite impressive. Sometimes in electric cars you have compromised storage space due to the fact that the car has to accommodate a wealth of batteries underneath. But in the E2008, you get the same amount of storage, 405 litres, as you do in the petrol and diesel versions. And if you fold the seats down, that increases to 1,400 litres. Plus, the boot itself is actually quite cleverly designed. It comes with underfloor storage, and you can bang it into these little stands to allow you to load your shopping and your bits and bobs in there without having to hold this constantly in place. And underneath, it also comes with this very stylish Peugeot man bag, which doubles as a little accommodation pouch to store the 6-meter Type 2 charging cable. Very stylish. Thank you, Peugeot. Around the back, there's a decent amount of space with good head and leg room for passengers up to 6 feet tall. There's not much adjustability with the seats, but it's certainly big enough back here for both children and adults. It's a good family car. We'll talk more about the design in just a bit, but I'll take you through some of the practicality highlights. You've got a couple of cup holders here. You've got a nice big storage compartment in the center console. The glove box is an okay size, and then up front, just in front of the gear changer, you've got a decent amount of space for your bits and bobs. 2 USB ports, one USB-C and one full size. Plus, if you open this little section here, you'll find a wireless charging mat for your mobile phone. Loads of options on how to charge your phone. You've got 2 more USB ports around the back. And you've got this handy little stand for your mobile phone so you can watch movies by yourself in the car. Very nice. So those are the good bits. Now the quirks. This is a French car, so of course it's going to have lots of quirks. First and foremost, the steering wheel isn't a wheel. They've redesigned it, and it's now a dodecahedron or something. They've got a flat bottom and a flat top, and they say they've done this because it allows you to have a bit more legroom. Nonsense. And also to see the instruments more clearly. But the reason you wouldn't be able to see the instruments if this was a circular wheel is because the instruments have been positioned too low down. So I think they've given this a flat top because they've messed up with the positioning of the instruments. Don't think I haven't caught you out on that, Peugeot. Anyway, the actual instrument gauge is very clever. It's part of their iCockpit design, which looks amazing because it's got this 3D effect, which brings the most important information to the fore, and the less important information lives just beyond that by about an inch away. You might not be able to see it in this footage, but take my word for it, it looks pretty impressive. What I don't like very much is the central infotainment screen. It looks nice enough, and it's a touch screen and it's fairly responsive, but I don't like the way it interacts with the buttons located below it. There's so many buttons on the center console that it's very confusing, honestly, and they're angled in such a weird way as to make it really difficult to see what each one of these buttons does, especially when you're driving at night. Plus, the bottom row of buttons actually clicks to give you a physical indication that you've pushed the button, and the top row does absolutely nothing. They work and feel completely different, as if they were designed by 2 different departments. As for the screen, well, it's not the most responsive thing in the world, and it's full of little quirks. For example, how do you get to the main menu? I was looking around for a button for ages, but apparently you've got to do it by pressing 3 fingers on the screen at once to take you to the main menu. Why? I have no idea. But anyway, I think most people are going to end up using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, unless you've got a Nokia, in which case, yeah, you're out of luck. So, what's it like to drive? Well, really good. It's really refined, really quiet. Electric cars are just so relaxing to me, and it's understandable because there's no internal combustion engine. These things are, generally speaking, so quiet and so relaxing. But because they don't have internal combustion engines that make a lot of noise, you can sometimes end up hearing quite a lot of other sound throughout the cabin. You can hear tire noise, wind noise, debris and dirt being flicked up on the underside. But the E2008 is still quiet. They've done a remarkable job of suppressing unwanted noise in this car. The seats are really good as well. They're comfortable, they're supportive. They're actually better than you get in some more expensive electric SUVs, Teslas, I-Paces, etc. Peugeot have done a really good job with that. The steering wheel, or dodecahedron, feels really nice in your hands as well. I don't know if Peugeot have increased the sportiness, the responsiveness of it, but generally speaking, it does feel quite responsive, and actually it makes the car feel alive in your hands. The suspension is quite well judged. The E2008 soaks up most bumps well enough to feel comfortable, and although it feels like there's a bit of body roll, it's certainly nothing out of the ordinary for a small SUV. It's definitely not a sports car, but that doesn't mean it can't tackle the odd bend. When you do find yourself going through a corner, after that initial bit of body roll, it settles in quite nicely, and the body control is actually quite impressive for a vehicle of this type. And there's bags of grip in this car, there really is, and that's despite the fact that it uses low rolling resistance tyres that are designed to help you get as much mileage as possible rather than getting as much grip as possible. And it gives you plenty of confidence to throw it into a corner, whether that's on purpose or whether you're responding to an incident that's unfolding live in front of you. There are 3 driving modes in this car. There's Eco, there's Normal, and there's Sport. In Eco mode, it restricts you to 60 kilowatts. In Normal, you get 80 kilowatts. And in Sport mode, it unleashes the full 100 kilowatts of power. Yes. Now, what does that get you? Well, it'll do 0 to 62 in 9 seconds, so it's definitely not quick enough to worry a Tesla. But you get 300 Newton meters of torque in this car, so it's plenty peppy enough to get you off the line. And actually, I think this car will end up feeling more responsive than the petrol or the diesel versions, because in those cars you have the start-stop system, which ultimately take about a second and a half for the engine to restart after being stationary. So this will feel like the nippier car when you're driving through traffic. The only problem is, once you get up to speed, say around 40 miles an hour, the motor runs out of torque and power and suddenly ends up feeling quite asthmatic, and there's definitely not enough grunt to complete that last minute overtaking maneuver that you might expect from an electric car. Brakes, they're good actually, they're strong, they're consistent, and they inspire confidence. In some electric cars, they can feel slightly unnatural due to that shift between regenerative braking and physical braking, but in this, it feels absolutely fine. If anything, I would argue that there's not enough regenerative braking. When you lift off the throttle under normal circumstances, the car doesn't really slow down too much. There is a mode that allows you to have slightly more regen. If you pull back on the gear lever, you go into B mode, and that slows the car down slightly more aggressively, but it's never enough to bring the car to a complete standstill just by lifting off the throttle. How do I feel about that? I like the option of being able to stop an electric car just by lifting off. I know not everyone's the same, but there are lots of cars out there that give you the choice. The E2008 doesn't give you the choice. As for charging, the E2008 is compatible with 100 kilowatt rapid charging. So if you can find a 100 kilowatt charger, it can go from 0 to 80% in 30 minutes. And it'll do a full charge on a 7 kilowatt domestic wall box in 8 hours. Peugeot will also give you 6 months of free charging on the Polar network and a home wall box. So drive it often enough, and this could be a pretty cheap car to run. On the whole, the E2008 is a charming little car. I would question the range, but apart from that, it's got so much going for it. I mean, not everybody has 60, 70, 80,000 pounds to spend on a luxury electric SUV. So the fact you can pick one of these up for 29,000 pounds and end up with a car with decent amounts of space, that's fun to drive, that's quiet, that's refined, that looks really cool, I say is a really good thing. Ultimately, if you're looking for a nice, family-friendly electric SUV with a weird steering wheel and some quirky electronics, definitely give the E2008 a look.